Welcome to the Green Room, where we explore the environmental issues that green up our world. Today we have a fun show on vermicompost, about breaking down food waste with worms. Our guests are Jessie Raudenbush, owner of Starr Valley Farms, and Noelle Bowman of the Washtenaw County Public Works Department. Jessie and Noelle, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Barbara. Pleasure to be here.
So Jessie, let's start with you, and please tell us about your business, Starr Valley Farms. Where is that? How big is it? When did you start it?
Sure. Well, I've been in business since 2010, which is when I cast out on this crazy journey on my own. I've been vermicomposting my entire life, basically, but I decided to make it a business in 2010. Our main farm is located in Eaton Rapids, Michigan, although I help to operate several satellite sites around the greater Ann Arbor area.
Okay. And you have a really nice website, starvalleyfarms.com, with
Thank you.
two
Yes.
R's.
Correct.
Yeah. And you've got all kinds of great stuff on there. You sell a bunch of different products. So why don't you tell us about some of the things you sell?
Sure. My particular farm, our main focus is worm castings production for use in organic growing in agricultural applications. So that's our main focus. So our operations are kind of tailored around making as much castings as we can. Now, a side aspect of that is we end up with a lot of worms. So we also sell worms as well. And then probably 4 or 5 years ago, I broke out and started installing vermiculture systems, large-scale systems, and offering training on that. So we're doing a lot of things. Farming, you've kind of got to look for any and every possible angle to make an income, and so that's kind of where we're at.
Well, I hear you were saying that in the spring you get really busy filling orders for
Yes.
the worm castings, and I guess it's like super nutritious for the
Yes.
plants. They grow really fast. Research shows that it really improves them, right?
Yes, yes, it's an amazing material. A lot of research has been coming out over the past few years, which is, I think, one of the reasons the popularity is kind of getting a rebirth of vermiculture, especially in food production. It's an amazing material full of all kinds of biodiversity. It creates a very healthy environment for your plants, as well as the soil that you apply this stuff to.
So we can order either the castings or we can order tea bags, I guess, which then we can make a compost tea?
Correct, exactly.
That sounds really convenient.
Yeah, it is. It's another method of applying the microbial benefits of the casting. So you're using finished castings and bubbling that or brewing it and kind of teasing out the beneficial microbes, getting them in a liquid form where you can more easily apply them to your crops. So the compost tea it's very, very convenient and user-friendly.
It's kind of a miracle, a small miracle, that the worms can take this food waste and turn it into something like liquid gold.
Right.
So another thing that is beneficial about these worms is that they reduce our food waste in an environmentally friendly way, and that's why, Noelle Bowman, you're here to talk about that, since you're a solid waste specialist with Washtenaw County. So tell us about your program that you've instituted at the Zeeb Road office, the county office there.
Yeah, absolutely. So over at 705 North Zeeb Road, the Western County Service Center, where the Solid Waste Division is housed, we actually installed a vermiculture system with the help of Jessie, and I think it was late 2015, was it? And basically we installed that for the purpose of, instead of employees putting their food waste into the trash, it goes into the system instead. And in addition to food waste, in the bathrooms in our building, there's paper towel dispensers, and so we're able to actually collect that paper towel and also include it in the what we feed into the vermiculture system. And to date, so the system's been operational probably about 2.5 years now, and we've diverted about a ton of food waste from that office.
That's great.
Yeah.
And why do we want to keep food waste, aside from the fact that we don't want our landfills to fill up? What is it about food waste that's so bad when it breaks down?
Yeah, so when food waste is sent to a landfill, it's it's in the ground and it's mixed up with stuff, but it's not as precise of a recipe. So it's not guaranteed to break down in the same way that it would in, for instance, a compost environment. And it can, and there's research that indicates that food waste, in addition to yard waste and things like that, really do contribute to methane and other greenhouse gas emissions, which ultimately, as we know, contribute to climate change. So really, I mean, so through this one system, we've been able to prevent a whole ton of food waste that would have otherwise just gone and sat in the landfill. And it's anybody's guess if it's actually being broken down properly or contributing to climate change or whatnot. So.
And I guess methane is far more potent than carbon dioxide, like anywhere from, I've seen 34 times to 64 times to 100 times more. I mean, depending on which research you're looking at, but
Yeah.
we do want to avoid methane. And Jesse, your Starr Valley website says, Starr Valley Farms website says that the EPA says each American throws away an average of over a pound of food scraps every day. So we really do want to cut down on that if at all possible. So Jesse, what are some of the other places in Southeast Michigan that you've built systems?
Sure. Well, I can, there are, I guess, 2 or 3 different classifications. There are agricultural applications, there are waste diversion applications, and then there are educational applications.
Okay.
So I've worked with schools around Ann Arbor, I've worked with a hospital, I've worked with a couple universities, and it talks with another university right now. And then personally, my favorite client is other farmers. They're kind of on the same schedule as me, and things just kind of work a little more smoothly because we're kind of on the same season. So I really enjoy working with farmers, but the benefit of vermicomposting is applicable to many different areas, and so waste diversion folks are very, very, as Noelle can attest, very interested in this means and methods.
But one nice thing about the county program is that you're also using it not just for waste diversion, but also applying it to the garden that's there?
Yeah, exactly. So we actually strategized for the system to be placed adjacent to an existing garden.
Perfect.
And while we have not harvested yet, we do hope to do so this year and hopefully apply those castings to that garden, which is like 10 feet away from where they'll be harvested.
So I guess Eberwhite School has a program too, right?
Yes, that is correct. There's this amazing retired now teacher from Eberwhite who organized for a vermiculture system to be installed there. And what they do is the elementary school students collect the food scraps from the cafeteria from lunchtime, and then their role is to put it in the vermiculture system. And it's just a very, very impressive system. And it's even more impressive that the teacher who started it was able to hand the baton over to
Great.
the school leadership now that
True
he's gone.
test of
And
success.
exactly, and it's being maintained very successfully. So,
Good.
yeah.
Do they have a garden where they're using it at all?
You know, that's a great question.
They do.
Okay, yes.
Okay, cool. All the more cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it must be really fun for the kids and so educational. They learn all about the cycle, the carbon cycle and all that. Really interesting stuff. And you know, you mentioned that there were some universities, I guess Washtenaw Community College is one, and Tillian Farms is using it, Leslie Science Center, so those are names that people in an area might know as familiar. So it's all around us.
Yeah.
If you didn't notice, it is getting more and more popular. So these are big systems that we've been talking about, mostly outdoors, right? So let's talk about if somebody wants to have a system in their home, like a small household. How would they get started doing that?
Absolutely, great question and great point. And I do a fair amount of this during the winter. Really, it's as simple as getting maybe a 12-gallon storage bin, a rubber plastic storage bin, putting some aeration holes in that. Then we're going to add bedding materials, something like shredded cardboard, shredded newspaper, fall leaves, cocoa coir, lighter, fluffier things. You moisten that, introduce it into the system, and then you add your worms. And then over time, you're going to be adding your food scraps, and the worms are going to process or digest that stuff most often as fast as you can feed it to them. But slowly you'll fill up that bin over time. And I like to shoot for about a 3-month cycle.
Okay.
So I'll be filling that thing over 3 months. And then as the worms are working on that material and digesting it, it turns into worm castings and kind of matriculates to the bottom. So when you're coming up on time to harvest around that 3-month period, most of your worms are going to be hanging around near the top, and everything below that is going to be castings. Then you're going to separate that. You can use your castings right away, and then you'll add your worms back to the system and start the cycle over again. So, but it's very, very easy, very simple, and does not take up very much room at all. As I said, I do that a lot in the winter, so I can have easy access to worms, because we sell the worms all year round.
So to grind it up, they don't have teeth, right?
Correct, correct.
So I hear that you want to put a little bit of something grit in the bin so they get it in their gizzard. I guess like chickens need some.
Good point, and I missed that step. You've been doing your research.
Yeah, I've been enjoying reading it. It's very interesting.
Good. Yes, typically a handful of soil mixed in with that bedding is all it takes, and because the worms don't have teeth, what they end up doing is kind of waiting until the material, the food scraps, gets a little softer and mushier, and then they can move into it. And they kind of slurp and suck rather than chew. But some of the soil grit from that is also, it's mixed up and incorporated into the food as well, so that's ingested. Well then, once the worm intakes it, it has got a movement and motion that grinds that stuff up, and that's really where the chewing part comes from. So a little bit of grit definitely helps to speed things up, and kind of a simple way to help your worms give them some teeth.
So are there certain types of food that they don't like?
Very little. How do I answer this question? Earthworms, red wiggler earthworms will digest and process just about anything of organic origin, but they definitely like certain things better than others. Highly acidic things are a little bit tough for them to handle. Citrus. Hot or spicy things are a little bit tough for them to process.
They're sensitive critters.
Right, peppers,
yeah.
So they'll eat the skin of the pepper, but then you'll see a lot of seeds left because the capsium is really in the seeds. So they'll avoid that. But typically, they're pretty happy with that, whatever you introduce them to.
And you mentioned temperature. Can you grow them outside in the winter? But a household, they'd just be easier to have them in your basement or something, right?
Right, and so their worm's metabolism is highly affected by the temperature. So anything going on outdoors during the winter is obviously going to slow down a lot. And that's one of the reasons why these larger systems are really handy, because you can add more material, create biomass, and then there's natural heat produced. We also tend to add more nitrogen-rich stuff in the winter, so it kind of creates this earth oven. And these systems are underground, so they're buffered on all sides. So they're really not being exposed to ambient freezing cold temperatures. So the worms' behavior, their activity may slow way down, but they're not going to freeze and they're not going to die. Smaller systems, they're exposed to ambient air temperature. Those are going to have a hard time in the winter. They'll basically freeze solid. So you're going to want to bring that indoors, either a garage or a basement, or if you have a forgiving mate, in the kitchen.
Because they could potentially, there could be a little bit of an odor and maybe some fruit flies or something. So that's why the basement tends to be a nice.
It is. It does. But if you're maintaining these systems correctly, there's very little odor, if any at all.
Okay.
Fruit flies is always a risk, but again, if you're maintaining these systems correctly, it does not appear or happen very often. And mainly, we're covering any new food scraps we put in there. We don't just leave it sitting on top, exposed, in kind of a buffet.
All right, well, those are some really good tips for how to get started. One thing that I was concerned about was we'd had a guest a few months ago, Dr. Bernard Blassie from Cornell, and he was here talking about invasive worms.
Yes.
And I was worried, oh, geez, what would happen because like if you put some of this compost out on your yard and there were some worms in it. So I called him up and he said, don't worry about it, these kind of worms are not invasive in our area.
Right.
It's either too cold or whatever. So that was nice to know.
Yes, the red wigglers are naturally kept in check by our climate. If we're not providing a safe haven for them through the winter, they're going to peter out. They're not going to make it. So
That's nice. Nice to know. So tell us before we let you go, you have an interesting start. It's a family business. Tell us about that.
sure, I was born and raised and grew up back east in Boston, Massachusetts. I lost my accent a long time ago. Probably a good thing. But my grandmother lived 60 miles east on Cape Cod, and she had a worm farm. So she was the first worm farmer in our family. And I'd spend a large chunk of every summer, all the way through college, going to visit her and work on her farm.
Nice.
So it was an amazing time in my life and a lot of fond memories, and I learned a lot. Learned a lot.
So is your business now involve any of your family?
No, well, yes and no. Part-time. My mother-in-law is one of my worm pickers or worm harvesters.
Okay.
Certain times a year when things are really busy and I've kind of got to be at other places, she steps up and harvests worms for me so I can fill those orders. Other than her, it's me and the worms. But I do often hire laborers or help for vermiculture system installations. That's kind of a lot of manual labor, and my knees aren't what they used to be, so I need a little young blood with help with those. But typically, it's me.
Because they start out with cinder blocks, right? And so the outdoor systems are a lot more involved than something somebody would have
Correct.
indoors. Yeah. Well, it's all really interesting, and we did tell people we'll tell them again, the website starvalleyfarms.com, and we'll have that up on the screen
Thank you.
as well. And also I wanted to tell people about this book. I'm partial to this book because I came across it back in the 1980s because I'm from Kalamazoo,
Oh,
and the
yeah.
woman who wrote it is from Kalamazoo. And so I've known about this for a really long time, but never bothered to look at this book until just this week getting ready for this interview. And it's really, it's very informative. And it's the 35th anniversary. So this is about, it's called Worms Eat My Garbage by Mary Applehoff. And you also had a good resource that you wanted to tell people about. What was that?
Sure, it's an online resource. Any frequently asked question that you might have, it's an excellent resource to check for specifically for worm care. Also gives many different variations of vermiculture, small vermiculture systems. The one I used as an example is just one. There are many, many ways to do this. Some are simpler than others. So what folks often do is they'll start with a small, simple bin, and then as they get better at it, they may graduate to something larger or different that works for them.
Great. Well, it's been very, very interesting, I must say. And so I really appreciate you both being here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara. It's been a pleasure.
For an online archive of all our Green Room shows, go to washtenaw.org/greenroom. Thanks for joining us here in the Green Room.